Now, let me ask you that question. Was James Callum Fletcher a hero, or was he a dangerous soldier who ignored orders and did whatever he wanted? The answer depends on where you're looking from. For the court-martial, he was the second thing. For Churchill, he was the first. In the Norwegian resistance archives, his name still doesn't even show up in a footnote. And for the customers at his carpentry shop, just a quiet man who did good work. But I want to ask you something different. Think about the general who read Fletcher's report before that glider took off. The one who stamped "not considered" on it and set it aside. He knew where 11 men were going. He knew the risks. He had the warning in his hands. And he said, "Plan approved." What happened to that general? Nothing. No court-martial, no rank stripped, no official record of any kind, because he had followed the rules. And Fletcher, the man who broke the rules, finished the job alone and walked 40 miles through enemy territory to get home, was the one who got court-martialed. Is that unfair? Yes. Is that rare in history? No. Now here's the real question I'm leaving you with. If you had been on that airfield, and you knew the guy standing next to you had said the plan was wrong, would you have listened to him? Drop that in the comments. I genuinely want to know. James Fletcher never asked himself that question. He just struck a match, burned his orders, and did his job. That, to me, is what real courage looks like. If this story hit you, hit the like button. Subscribe if you want more. Every day on this channel, I tell the stories of Britain's forgotten war heroes that history left behind. And tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. See you there. Let me bring you up to speed first, because without understanding Monte Cassino, none of what follows makes sense. 1944, Italy, winter. Allied forces, Americans, British, Poles, New Zealanders, are pushing north, trying to reach Rome. Rome is the big prize, strategic and symbolic. But there's one thing standing in the way of the road to Rome. And it's not just any obstacle. Monte Cassino, a mountain 1,700 feet above sea level. At the very top, a Benedictine monastery that's been there since the 7th century. 1,300 years old, and on the slopes, in the valleys, dug into the mountain itself, Germany's most carefully prepared defensive system in all of Italy. The Gustav Line. The Germans spent months building it. Concrete bunkers carved directly into the rock, built to take direct artillery hits. Machine gun positions set up to cover each other's fire from multiple angles. A coordinated artillery network, calculated from every direction. And right in front of it, a narrow valley, the Rapido River. Open, flat, completely exposed terrain. For any attacking force, a killing ground. Allied commanders launched 4 major assaults on this line. First assault, January 1944. Thousands of casualties. Pulled back. Second assault, February 1944. More hundreds of casualties. Pulled back. Third assault, March 1944. Heavy losses, pulled back. Fourth assault, May 1944. Finally broke through. But by then, 4 months had passed. Tens of thousands of men had died or been wounded. The Battle of Monte Cassino was the longest, bloodiest engagement of the entire Italian campaign in World War II. And right in the middle of that hell, one British sniper disappeared, or stayed. The difference between those two words is the whole point of this story. His name was Thomas Edwin Greer, born in Leeds, 1919, a typical Northern English working-class kid. His dad was a tailor, up before dawn every day, bent over a workbench, making a living off other people's clothes. His mom worked in a factory, the standard story for a lot of British women at the time. Thomas was the youngest of 5 kids. Small house, crowded table, tight budget every week. Nobody complained, because everyone on the street was the same way. When Greer finished school, there was no big plan waiting for him. He walked straight into a supermarket job. Cashier, stocking shelves, moving things around in the back. Invisible work done by invisible people. One of thousands of guys just like him in every city in England. When the war started, he volunteered. Why? He never said. Years later, a journalist cornered him and asked. He shrugged. Maybe it was patriotism. Maybe it was the pull of something bigger. Maybe And this is just a guess. He just needed to get out of that supermarket, away from those shelves, away from a tomorrow that looked exactly like today. We honestly don't know, but here's what we do know. In basic training, something got noticed: marksmanship. Greer's accuracy was abnormal from the very first sessions. Wind reading came naturally to him. Distance estimation, breath control, trigger discipline. It didn't look learned. It looked like he'd been born with it. The instructors pulled him aside, put him in the sniper program, extended training, specialized prep, and then Italy. He arrived with his unit in late 1943, moved north slowly, got closer and closer to the Gustav Line. February 1944, he reached the slopes of Monte Cassino. After that, everything changed. February 1944, the slopes of Monte Cassino. A battle is hard to describe, but let me try. Let me put you there. Picture a muddy, soaking trench, maybe 3 feet wide, 6 feet deep, open at the top, rain coming down. Every night it rains, every morning it stops, every afternoon it starts again. The ground is never dry. Your boots sink with every step into mud that never fully sets. Men on your right, men on your left. In front of you, German positions, anywhere from 100 to 500 yards away, and an artillery system that's fully coordinated. Wherever you move, something's coming in. An explosion every 2 minutes. Close, far, sometimes right next to you. Night assault. Push toward the German line in the dark, in the mud. Fall back. Leave your dead behind. Carry your wounded. Get ready again at dawn. And between all of that, hours, long, frozen, endless hours. That's when the snipers work. Greer worked in those hours, moving from one position to the next, lying completely still for hours at a stretch, controlling his breathing, not rushing, waiting. One shot, then move, then wait again. Standard sniper technique. Patience, silence, invisibility. But in the last days of February, his unit received orders to pull back. Greer didn't pull back. I have to stop and ask this question, because everything else in this story depends on it. How did he stay? There are 2 versions, and the official records don't fully settle it. Version 1, the one closest to the official paper trail. When the withdrawal order came through, Greer was forward in his position. Communications were disrupted that night. Multiple units were moving at the same time. The message didn't reach him. His unit pulled back. Greer stayed. By morning, he was alone and didn't know it. Version 2, the one some historians find more credible. Greer got the message, weighed it, and chose to stay. There's indirect evidence for this. Some of Greer's handwritten field notes made it into the archives after the war. Researchers got access to them in the 1990s. In one of those notes, the exact date isn't clear, but the context points to February 1944. There's one line. "Leaving this position is wrong. If we leave, it'll cost twice as many men to take it back. Maybe more." Was that written before the withdrawal order? After it? We don't know. But it was written by a man who stayed. Did the order not reach him? Or did it reach him, and he stayed anyway? That question is still open. And that open question is what makes this story heavier. Now I need to tell you something important. Without this detail, the rest of the story doesn't fully land. Greer's position was right in the middle of no man's land. Not on the German side, not on the British side, right in the middle. The narrow, deadly corridor between the 2 armies. The Germans were looking at him from the north. The British were looking at him from the south. Both sides could see him through their binoculars. Both sides could see him. And in the first few days, both sides tried to take him out. The Germans sent snipers 3 times. 3 times they failed. Greer kept shifting his position. The paradox was this: his movement range was extremely tight. He couldn't go too far forward, couldn't go too far back. In that narrow space, staying invisible should have been nearly impossible. But every time, he vanished. The British tried 2 evacuation operations. Both failed. The first time, Greer signaled the approaching team to go back. The second time, the team actually reached him, but Greer wouldn't leave. The days piled up. Day 4, his rations ran out. Day 6, his water ran out. He drank rainwater, sometimes snow. Day 10, the German commander issued a third elimination order. That one failed too. And after that, something started changing on both sides. Something quiet that nobody was talking about out loud. Let's go to the German side for a minute, because some of the most interesting moments of this story happened over there. In the first week, Greer was a standard target. Enemy sniper. Elimination order issued. Process started. Normal procedure. But then something happened. The snipers couldn't find him. First attempt, nothing. Second attempt, nothing. Third attempt, nothing. And after each failed attempt, there was frustration first, then confusion, then something else. A weird kind of curiosity that started building among the German snipers. One man, open terrain, under constant observation from both sides. No rations, no water, barely any room to maneuver, and invisible. How? By the end of the second week, a captured German communications record, this surfaced in archives in the late 1990s, has an officer's note that reads, "Target still active, elimination unsuccessful. Operational value appears limited, however his presence is generating a noticeable psychological effect in the sector." Psychological effect. A German commander logged a psychological effect caused by a single British sniper. To use those words, he had to have seen something, in his men's eyes, in their posture, in the way they talked, something that made him reach for those specific words. The British side was wrestling with a completely different problem. How do you get him back? 2 evacuation attempts had failed. Both times Greer had either signaled them away or flat out refused to move. For the command, this was both a tactical problem and a bureaucratic mess. The man was clearly active, visible firing, but he hadn't been formally listed as a casualty. On day 12, the unit commander made a call. Greer went onto the official casualty list. Combat casualty, status, unknown. But one signals officer didn't let it go. He kept tracking Greer through his binoculars every day, kept writing daily reports. Over time, those reports built up into a picture. One of those reports has this line: "Personnel remains in fixed position, actively restricting enemy tactical movement in sector. Single person effect, disproportionate. Single person effect, disproportionate." A British signals officer writing about his own soldier used the word disproportionate because there were no words in the military vocabulary for what one man was doing to 2 armies at the same time. Now let me tell you the most unexpected part of this whole story. Around day 15, maybe 16, the exact day isn't recorded. On the German side, among a small group of enlisted men, something happened that nobody planned, nobody ordered, nobody authorized. Night. The front was quiet. A few soldiers came up to the edge of no man's land on the German side. They had a small package with them. Canned food, bread, maybe a water bottle. They set it down, walked back. In the morning, they checked. The food was gone. They did it again the next night. Gone again. Third night. Fourth night. It became a routine. Nobody talked about it openly. Nobody asked questions, but everybody knew. The person who documented this was a German lieutenant in that sector. His personal letters were captured after the war. In one of them he wrote, "The men have been leaving food at the edge of no man's land for the British sniper. Been going on for about a week now. I didn't tell them to stop. I couldn't. I can't fully explain why I couldn't. But I couldn't. I couldn't." Read that again. A German officer, in the middle of an active war, watched his own soldiers leave food for the enemy and couldn't bring himself to stop them. What do you think made them do that? Just basic human decency? Something else? Drop that in the comments. I genuinely want to know. So what was going on inside Greer's head? I want to know the answer to that, but we don't fully have it. Because Greer didn't talk. He didn't keep a journal during the war. Didn't write letters home, or if he did, none of them made it into the archives. After the war, he gave 0 interviews. The only conversation on record happened when a journalist cornered him at his home in Leeds in the late 1970s. The journalist asked, "Why did you stay?" Greer thought about it. Long pause. Then he said, "If I left, the Germans would have taken that position. Once they had it, they could reach the line behind us. Leaving wasn't right." The journalist pushed. "Were you sure you'd survive?" Greer, "No." "Then why?" Greer paused again. "Then, you don't have to be sure you'll make it. You just have to be sure about the right thing to do." You don't have to be sure you'll make it. You just have to be sure about the right thing to do. This man spent 36 days, wounded, thirsty, out of food, running a fever, stuck between two armies, holding on to that one sentence. And he never let go of it. Day 20. Greer's physical condition was getting worse, based on hospital records and witness statements after the fact. He had a small piece of shrapnel in his right arm. He'd probably taken it in the first week. Small, but deep, and it had been left untreated. It was infected. He had a fever. He'd lost several pounds. His face was hollowed out, but every morning he kept firing. And during those days, something strange was quietly happening on both sides of the line. Something small, unspoken, unplanned, every morning. And on the German side, on the British side, soldiers were opening up their binoculars and looking at the same spot. Is he still there? Still there. And when they saw him, shoulders would drop. A breath would come out. The day would start. A German soldier's diary from that period was examined by a historian in 1998. On one of the pages covering those weeks, there's this line: "Checked on the Englishman this morning. Still there. The men settled down after that." It's something, a strange something, but everyone feels it. Everyone feels it. Enemy soldiers, relaxing because their enemy was still alive. How do you explain that? Seriously, what kind of psychology is that? Day 25. The German command made a different call. Standard elimination attempts hadn't worked. Every failed attempt was making things worse. Each one just seemed to add to this weird fixation both sides had developed around this one guy. Command put together a special team. 3 men, the most experienced snipers in the unit. A nighttime operation, detailed planning. Just after midnight, the team moved out, went into no man's land before dawn. The team came back. Failed. The official report filed afterwards said this: "Target located. Elimination could not be carried out. Details are being held under operational security classification." Details held under operational security classification. That line caught the attention of historians who went through these archives decades later. Because a standard failed operation report doesn't hide the details. It explains the failure. It lists the obstacle. But this report hid the details. Why? The most consistent theory: the team found Greer, looked at him, a man who'd been out there for 25 days, wounded, infected, feverish, worn down to almost nothing, but still in his position, still upright, and they couldn't do it, can't prove it. But there's no other explanation that holds up. Day 31. The British command had to move. Greer was officially listed as a casualty, but visibly, obviously, he was still active. That was both a tactical problem and an administrative one that couldn't just sit there. A plan was put together. Daytime operation. Under a smoke screen, 2 soldiers would go forward, reach Greer, and bring him back, walking or carried. The plan was set. The team was selected. Early that morning, the operation launched. Smoke screen went up. 2 soldiers moved forward, covered the difficult terrain, reached Greer. Greer didn't go, based on the testimony later given by the team's senior soldier. He looked at us. Then he said, 2 more days, I'll come back in 2 days. We pushed back, said he had orders that he needed to come now. He looked at us again, said 2 days. That was it. He didn't say anything else. The team came back empty-handed, reported to their commander. The commander's note for that day: personnel refused to leave position. Forced removal was not possible. Reassessment required. Situation ongoing. Forced removal was not possible. Men went to get him. He wouldn't go. They came back without him, and the commander genuinely didn't know what to do next. Day 36, morning, early. Something moved on the German side. A soldier came up to the edge of the trench. In his hand, a small piece of white cloth tied to the end of a stick. No order, no authorization, no official ceasefire, no diplomatic contact. Just a white cloth. A British officer on the other side saw it and filed a report. Within a few minutes, a signal came back from the British line. Small, partial, but understood. And then, both sides stopped firing. The whole sector. In the middle of Monte Cassino, in the middle of a battle that hadn't stopped in 4 months, both sides went quiet at the same time. For a few minutes, 2 British soldiers moved into no man's land during those minutes. They reached Greer. This time, Greer came. Why? The team asked. I said 2 days. 2 days passed. I had to keep my word. 36 days. He'd done the math in his head. He'd made a promise on day 31. And on the exact day that promise was up, not a day early, not a day late, he came. When they brought Greer back, his condition was serious, but better than expected. His right arm was infected and swollen. High fever, severely dehydrated, face completely hollowed out, several pounds lighter than he'd been 5 weeks ago. Walking was hard, but he refused to be carried. Walked on his own to the first aid post, then transferred to a field hospital. Treatment took weeks. His arm was saved. The fever came down. He slowly got his strength back. During that time, various officers came to see him. They had questions. How did he survive? Where did he get water? What about the food? Why didn't the Germans shoot? Greer answered everything briefly and directly. One officer asked the question everyone wanted answered. Both armies knew exactly where you were. Why didn't they shoot? Long pause. Greer shrugged. I don't know, he said. Maybe they didn't either. After the war, historians dug into this story carefully. And in the archives of both sides, documents written independently with no knowledge of each other, they found something similar. In the German records, in officer notes from that period, a few words come up again and again. Hartnäckig, stubborn, unnachgiebig, unyielding, standhaft, steadfast. And in one single document, just once, respect, respect. A German officer in active wartime used the word respect to describe an enemy British sniper. To write that word in a report, he had to have lived through those weeks, watched those days, felt something. In the British records, in the final summary report from the signals officer who'd tracked Greer throughout, the last line reads, "Personnel's solitary presence disproportionately restricted enemy tactical movement in the sector. Single-person effect cannot be categorized. Cannot be categorized. 2 archives, 2 languages, 2 enemies. About the same man saying the same thing, in different words, but the same thing." The war ended. 1945. Thomas Edwin Greer came back to Leeds, quietly, no ceremony. A few months later, an official letter arrived. Inside, a military medal citation, the British Army's decoration for outstanding gallantry in the face of the enemy in combat. Greer opened the letter. Read it again. Put it on the table. The letter sat on the table for a week. On the 8th day, Greer picked it up, put a short note inside, and mailed it back. The note had one sentence. "I didn't earn this. I just did my job." Command tried to change his mind. He said no. They tried again. He said no again. The military medal was never pinned on Thomas Edwin Greer. If you look at the official records, his name is there. Monte Cassino listed, 36 days recorded. The medal offer and the return, both on file, but the medal itself, sitting in an archive folder, marked returned. Never worn. Greer went back to Leeds, and went back to the supermarket. For real, the same one he'd left, same shelf-stocking job, same checkout lane, same corridors, like nothing had happened. He got married, had 1 daughter, lived in a small row house in an older part of the city, grew tomatoes in his back garden, went to church on Sundays, shopped at the local store. His neighbors describe him as quiet, polite, slightly distant, but decent. A good neighbor, he'd help if you needed it. But not a lot of words, not a lot of explanation. He never talked about the war. Never. Years went by. Sometime in the late 1970s, a neighbor finally couldn't help it and asked, "What did you do in the war?" Greer stopped, let a beat pass, then smiled, small, quiet. "Waited," he said. "I waited a lot." And that was the end of it. He died in 1987. He was 68, in his own home, peacefully. A small death notice ran in the local Leeds paper. 4 lines. Thomas Edwin Greer, retired World War II veteran, beloved husband and father. That's all, 4 lines. For 36 days. In the late 1990s, a set of Italian campaign wartime archives were opened to the public. Greer's story appeared for the first time in a small British military history journal. 1998, a more detailed piece came out in 2003. In 2011, a historian brought it into a full book chapter. And the debate, it's still going. One camp says Greer made the right tactical call. That position genuinely mattered. Holding it for 36 days provided real cover for the British line behind him. Brave, correct, justified. Another camp pushes back. He acted without orders. He blocked multiple official evacuation attempts. He got himself listed as a combat casualty. From a military discipline standpoint, this was, at minimum, problematic. And then there's a third group. For them, tactics and regulations aren't the point. Their question is different. How does it happen that 2 enemy armies, on one of the bloodiest fronts in the history of warfare in the middle of active combat, leave food for the same man, hold their fire on the same man, and then, at the end, both sides at the same moment without any order, quietly put down their weapons and let him walk through? Nobody has fully written the answer to that question, because the answer isn't in any war dictionary. Was Thomas Edwin Greer a hero? You tell me. For the command, he was a problem soldier. Acted without orders, refused evacuation, sent the medal back. For historians, he's an interesting case study. Single-person effect. Cannot be categorized. But here's what I keep coming back to. At the end of those 36 days, wounded, feverish, out of water, right in between 2 armies, Greer showed up on the exact day he said he would. Not a day early, not a day late. The exact day. And both sides at the same time, without anyone ordering them to, quietly put their weapons down and let him through. That doesn't happen in war. 2 enemy armies stop at the same time for the same man. Leave him food in the dark. Check on him through binoculars every single morning and breathe easier when he's still there. What kind of person does that? What kind of stillness? What kind of resolve? What kind of presence stops 2 armies at the same time? Put that in the comments. I really want to know what you think. Greer never answered that question. He just said, "I waited. I waited a lot." To me, that's not the definition of courage. That's the definition of belief. If this one got to you, hit the like button. Subscribe if you want more. Every day on this channel, I tell the stories of Britain's forgotten war heroes that history walked right past. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. See you there.